and Equity Committee meeting today is Monday, November the 4th. Council Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent at the moment. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one has signed in.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 1st meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved. If you'll read the first item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2019-0225, confirming the county executive's appointment of Megan Van Voorst to serve on the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board of Cuyahoga County for an unexpired term ending 6/30/2020.
Over to Ms. Holly from the Regional Director's Office. If you will please give us a little bit of background.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the County Executive, I'm here to recommend an appointment of Megan Van Voorst to the Cuyahoga County Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board. The board consists of 18 members, 10 of whom are appointed by the executive subject to council confirmation, and 8 of whom are appointed by the Ohio Department of Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services.
All right, and it looks like this is picking up in a term. Did someone vacate? Would she be looking to fill in someone else's?
Yes,
currency?
Cassie Handler.
Cassie Handler. All right. Any additional questions for Ms. Holly from the committee? There being none, if you'll please step up, Ms. Van Voorhis, and please state your name for the record to make sure that we're pronouncing it correctly, but specifically me. Give us a brief background and why you would like to serve on this board.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come in today. I'm pretty excited about this. So, for the record, my name is Megan Van Voorhis. In my day job life, I lead Arts Cleveland, a research and advocacy organization for arts and culture in the county. I'm also very interested in serving on the Adams board. I have a long-standing, probably the last 4 or 5 years, service to the Mental Health and Addiction Advocacy Coalition, first as a member of the Northeast Ohio Hub Steering Committee for that group, but also now I serve as the chair of that steering committee, and as a result of that, serve on the state board of the MAC. So I have a longstanding interest in mental health and addiction issues. I have a very personal connection to this from a family member who has struggled with and overcome many of the issues associated with bipolar disorder. I also have just a longstanding connection around arts and mental health issues, which is something that the Adams Board has traditionally led on and continues to lead on. There's a strong connection there. So for me, it's really an opportunity to both continue to serve the public, which is something that I'm very interested in, and I've done that through nonprofit service, but this would be a new opportunity for me to serve in a new way, and also to connect some things that I think are very important, one of which is that the arts do have a role to play when it comes to mental health issues, and I think that's something that I would bring to this board as a sort of a complement to others. And there's some really good examples of projects that I've been involved in. I'm on the advisory committee for Metro Health's Arts and Medicine advisory committee, and they've done some pretty cool projects with Cleveland kids. There's a project called the Students Are Free to Express project, where they're seeing some really successful results with the Cleveland schools partnership around mental health issues. So I think for me, these things are very connected, and just the opportunity to serve in a new capacity in a new way in the county seems really exciting to me.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Any questions, comments? I'll start with Ms. Conwell.
I don't have any questions, but just through the chair to Ms. Van Voorhis, just wondering if you knew about Judge Emanuela Groves and her partnership with the Adams Board and having working with the mental health and art.
Absolutely. She's not the only one that has an interest. I actually spoke with another person at our annual breakfast, another judge on the other side. I think it might be drug court that has an interest in wanting to deploy similar activities. Yes, we actually honored Emanuela Groves at the Arts Public Officials Breakfast that we did this year, just really for some leadership on that. And they're seeing some great results. And I know I saw you there when they did their annual show a couple weeks ago. And it's really exciting. A lot of times the arts really provide an opportunity to get around a block that would otherwise be difficult to go around. And so, yes, absolutely, she's great. And there are others that want to emulate her work, and I think that's great too. And the more we can integrate those kinds of tools, the better. They are often more affordable and yet achieve very similar and often greater results than pharmaceutical approaches. And we know that. I know that from a personal perspective. Often on dealing with bipolar disorder, it's often very difficult for people to get those meds right. So the Adams Board serves a very important function with our community behavioral health institutions and are often addressing gaps, that Medicaid often leaves behind for things that they don't fund. So.
And I think the special part was the mother and daughter.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
have presented and now have help, and the art therapy really brought them closer together, and how the mom stood up for her daughter, even her daughter was in her 30 or 40 range, that you never give up on those that you love. So, yeah, it's great.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes.
Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, Ms. Van Forest, thank you very much for volunteering and being interested in serving on this important board. What do you think we can do to reduce the high rates of addiction to alcohol and drugs that we have in this county and elsewhere?
I think there's a lot. I think continuing to support behavioral health services. To be honest, one of the first things that needs to happen is the Adams Board actually hasn't had an increase in many years in terms of the budget, and that would be one that would be a really great investment. More broadly, though, addiction, based on the people that I speak with in terms of the MAC Board, it's really early identification of issues, and the more that we can do that, some people are more susceptible to addiction issues than others, and to the extent that we can identify those things earlier on, the better. And so that, I think, means more engagement in school-based health programs, particularly areas where we're seeing folks engage in that kind of risky behavior. Suicide rates among young people are higher than ever, and that's really alarming, even though general risky behavior among that population is declining. And so I think that clearly that's an issue that needs to be resolved. I think we need to be attentive. Often people will self-medicate. We see those things happening very early on, and I think people who are connected and understand that can usually identify them. So the more that we can begin engaging in that sort of thing, the better. Obviously, the overprescription of opiates. I mean, this is one of the things that I would offer to the table, that things like expressive arts therapy is the first example that Councilwoman Conwell brought up, are actually not reimbursable. Most of the community behavioral health institutions that are engaged in that kind of activity actually have to pay for that out of pocket. So here you've got a solution, a potential solution that's more affordable and effective, and frankly, if you're addicted to it, it's probably a good thing. The making of art, the making of music, and yet it's not reimbursable. There's some problems that associated at the state level that we're trying to secure licensure for, but more resources devoted to those kinds of things, I think, are also an option, particularly for people that are, just getting blocked by other things. So I think all of those things, adequately investing in mental health and addiction services at the community behavioral health level, I think, are really important.
And Madam Chair, Ms. Van Voorhis, are there things that we can do to help prevent mental illness, or are we limited to waiting till it shows up and then responding to it?
That's a good question. I think that oftentimes, or more, I think yes, I think we do have to pay attention, and genetics are a factor. I mean, I can speak to my own family circumstances. When it surfaced in my family, nobody wanted to talk about it, but everybody in the family knew that my family member wasn't the only one that had struggled with this historically. And I think that is something that is really important, and perhaps a role that the Adams Board and others can play, which is really reducing stigma and having conversations. I have a close friend, Archie Green. He's a great guy. He's a rap artist in Cleveland, has really started to devote his work to helping to deal with issues of stigma in the Black community around mental health issues. And I think that that's really important. The more that we can raise it and begin to accept and to begin to talk about those things in public ways. Even, I mean, the fact that we can't even have those conversations in our families is really scary. The more we can have those conversations, then we can identify them maybe before these issues surface. So stigma reduction, I think, is really important one, and how that's handled. I'm a little bit nervous, honestly, of the billboards that I'm seeing right now relating to fentanyl, and I'm not sure that that's a totally productive. I don't know. I mean, powdered donuts actually look really good, and so the message that you have there is really lost. And so how do we think and disconnected, right? Like if something is really good, and then we're saying like, would you do this if you had, if you knew that fentanyl was included? I'm not sure that that's the appropriate way to deal with this issue. And so, a really coordinated and effective approach to dealing with issues of stigma, I think, is really important.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think you've demonstrated certainly the knowledge, willingness, and desire to serve on this committee. So if there are no further questions, comments, or concerns, I would verify, does this looks to need to be under second reading suspension?
Yes, if we could have second reading suspension, the next meeting is November 20th.
Okay, all right, then I'll make the motion to move this forward to the full body of the council under second reading suspension. Do I have a second?
Second.
If there are no further questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming before us, sharing your background and your willingness to serve in this capacity. It looks like you'll be back soon as your term is ending next year. So we look forward to the work that you are willing to do and bring to the body. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
If you'll read the next item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2019-0234, adopting various changes to the Cuyahoga County non-bargaining classification plan.
If you'll step forward, state your name, and share with us today what it is that you have before us.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Albert Bouchahine with the Personnel Review Commission. PRC routine maintenance of the county's class plan necessitate the revisions of 12 classifications before you for your consideration. None of the changes include any changes in pay grade, and therefore there is no fiscal impact on any of the incumbents in these classifications. The PRC recommended approving these to you at their October 2nd, 2019 meeting. All the modifications were prepared by the PRC class and comp staff, who's worked extensively with the Department of Human Resources and county management teams to ensure that they're fully informed of the proposed changes before you. In accordance with PRC rules, the proposed changes were posted on the PRC's website prior to your consideration today. I thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
For coming before the committee, looks like we have all revisions to your point. So this is a routine maintenance. When you say routine maintenance, you've got dates here as to when some of them were last visited. Can you just touch on some of the things that may have been revised, or is it just a matter of going through and checking a box and saying this is still good?
Madam Chair, we initiated in January of 2019 a 4-year routine maintenance cycle where we revisit every classification in the approximate 400 classifications that we have. So we want to be able to touch them at least once every 4 years without having a request come from the administration. So these are routine maintenance where we do look at the essential functions, we look at the minimum qualifications, we send out questionnaires to the incumbents that are in these classifications to ensure that the work that they're performing is still consistent with the classifications. So essentially, these are updates where we don't get requests from the administration, but we want to go ahead and every 4 years at least touch these classifications once.
Okay, perfect. And then the one last thing that I would ask of you is while you're doing the routine maintenance, I understand you say you talk to the incumbents. Do you talk to the supervisors as well, or anyone on the administrative side to reaffirm that these are, in fact, need no changes?
Madam Chair, yes, the process starts with questionnaires going to all the incumbents. Those questionnaires before the return to the PRC have to be reviewed by supervision, by the directors of the agencies who sign off on these questionnaires before we receive them. Once we make any updates to these classifications, we send the drafts back to the management team to ensure that we made the appropriate changes prior to us coming before you.
Excellent. And then I guess my other question would be, how many incumbents do we have here? And do you know how many departments are impacted? or at least reviewed? How many of the departments were reviewed?
Amongst these 12 classifications, it appears that there are six departments that were affected. I do not have the exact number of incumbents, but that's certainly easy enough for me to be able to email you with that information.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to my colleagues if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I saw Ms. Conwell's hand first. And then Mr. Miller.
Through the chair to Mr. Bushet. So all the incumbents are in each of these roles at the moment.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Conwell, yes, that is correct.
And if, as you're doing your routine maintenance, if you find one that's vacant and there's no incumbents in it, what is the role that you play?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Conwell, that does occur once in a while. We routinely check to see if there are vacant classifications. We reach out to HR and the department management to see if they want us to delete these classifications, or are they just vacant now, but they plan to fill them in the future. If there are no incumbents, then we ask the management team to fill out the questionnaire so we can update the classifications.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, Mr. Bushanine, are there any of these that you did routine maintenance on where the changes are substantial rather than minor?
All of these have changes. It's either in the minimum qualifications, Councilman, or the essential functions that we deem to be substantial enough to bring before you. There are routine maintenance changes that we make, and as a matter of refer to them as administrative changes where we don't bring before you. We view them as house cleaning, non-substantive, but anything we bring before this council we deem to be substantive.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Bushanine, are there any cases where after we make these changes, there might be a question as to whether any of the incumbents would be fully capable of performing the responsibilities or be fully qualified for the position as revised?
Madam Chair, to Councilman Miller, those type of questions I would refer to Human Resources. If there are employees that are not performing adequately enough or their performance issues, those would be dealt as a matter of the performance reviews and by the Department of Human Resources. If we do, once we get a questionnaire, see that there may be an incumbent that may not be actually performing the duties that match the classification spec, we would inform Human Resources. They would then investigate and determine whether a position audit for that employee would be required.
Madam Chair, Mr. Bushanine, my actual question was a little bit different. My question is whether any incumbent is going to be adversely affected by the changes. I'm looking for a situation where the incumbent is perfectly capable of performing the duties as currently described, but there may be a question about it, or they may not be capable of performing the duties as revised.
Madam Chair, to Councilman Miller, just so I understand, are you asking if we do an analysis as to whether an incumbent is capable of performing the essential functions of the job?
My question is whether any incumbent is going to be adversely affected by the proposed changes, by having their position now being described in a way that they may not be able to effectively perform, as opposed to the current situation where they can perform the duties as currently described.
Councilman, if I understand your question correctly, I have not experienced in my probably 15 years of doing class plan work where we've changed a classification in a way where an incumbent would not be able to perform that function.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm gonna take that as a no.
Okay. I think I kind of understand your question. But we'll take it as a no for the point of this meeting. Are there any additional questions? or comments? Okay, there being none, given that this is routine maintenance, I presume that we can move this under 3 readings.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, so I'll make the motion to move this to the full body of the council. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. If there are no further questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for coming. Our next item, if you'll please read it into the record.
Resolution number 2019-0237, confirming the county executive's reappointment of various individuals to serve on the Cuyahoga County Archives Advisory Commission for the term 12/1/2019 to November 30th, 2023.
And I'll turn it back over to Ms. Holly, if you'll give us a little bit of background with regards to the reappointment of these 2 individuals as well as the commission itself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the county executive, I am here to recommend the reappointment of Deborah Abbott and Keith Peppers to the Cuyahoga County Archives and Advisory Commission. The board promotes the identification and preservation of historical records and ensures access by Cuyahoga County and the general public. The board is made up of 9 members. 5 are appointed by the county executive and confirmed by county council, and they also have 4 ex officio members.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Do you have any questions for Ms. Holly? There being none, our first candidate is Ms. Deborah Abbott. Ms. Deborah Abbott, if you'll please step forward, state your name for the record, give us a little bit of your background and why you'd like to continue to serve.
I'm scared.
No, don't be scared.
I'm Dr. Deborah Abbott.
Doctor, my apologies,
That's
Dr.
okay.
Deborah Abbott.
That's quite all right. This will be a reappointment for me, and I want to stay here. My background, I'm a retired counselor from Cuyahoga Community College. And now my profession, I am a professional genealogist. I'm one of the national speakers and one of the experts on African American genealogy. I travel all over teaching people how to search their families. And I would like to see our county archives to be one of the premier research centers in the state of Ohio, let alone in the county, but in the state of Ohio. I serve I'm one of the trustees on the Ohio Genealogical Society board. I am on the board of directors for the Federation of Genealogical Societies, which is a national organization. I teach genealogy at the Institute of Genealogy and Historical Research down at Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia. This year will be my first year coordinating the African American track, which is a 5-day, all day, 8 to 5, instructional piece that teaches people how to research, and I'm going to do African American. They've got about 14 tracks. And so they've got Virginia and they've got military, they got all kinds of tracks. But I'm going to be the one that coordinates the African American. I teach there as well. I teach in the intermediate genealogy track as well as researching in the South. I also teach at the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, and in Salt Lake, they have the largest genealogy library in the world. And so I do teach there. I teach in the Southern, researching in the South there, as well as last year they created an African American track, and I taught half of that track along with one of my professional colleagues, LaBrenda Garrett Nelson, who is an attorney, and she and I together taught that track for the week at Salt Lake. And I just want us to have the same kinds of things that I've been privileged to participate in, and to help people understand that, especially for African Americans, our history is not lost. It is there. The records are there. You have the records. Only thing we got to do is get in there and pull them out and let people know that the records are there.
Well, that's encouraging. As we particularly, you hit on so many things that are just probably too broad and vast to even get into any type of discussion today, but I mean, you won me when you said Tri-C, so that was number one. And then when you talk about our history and it not being lost, I think there is a maybe it's a myth, I don't know, I've not even studied my own genealogy, so I'd love to be able to connect with you afterwards, and maybe you can help me understand some of the things that we need to know, particularly with this being the acknowledgement of the 400 years of slavery in this country, and the oppressive and repressive and suppressive things that have happened to us, so that we have lost our history and we don't really have that that connection that affords us to feel connected sometimes to our own country, and particularly in these turbulent times. So, like I said, I just want just an hour of your time later at another moment. But I am grateful for your willingness to serve with the breadth of experience you've just shared in a short window. The one thing that I would like to ask of you is that you've been in this position and you're being reappointed. Can you talk about a little bit of the work that you have already done?
With the council? Yes. Yeah, okay. Well, I have, because of my knowledge of people all around the country, and I didn't do it by myself, other members of this advisory board also assisted, but we were able to get the Ancestry.com into the county. So it's there, so that just like if they go to the libraries, you know, we see it on television, and if you put your credit card in there to get your 2 weeks free or whatever it is, people get frustrated with that, and so they can't find what they're looking for because they don't know how to use it, and so then what happens is they forget about it. The credit card is there. Ancestry is going to charge them $200. Okay, so in the state of Ohio, we've been kind of lucky, at least through the libraries, the county library system and the Cleveland library system, that they have Ancestry.com. When people start coming to research, that's one of the things that they're looking for. So even if they come to the county archives, if they get stuck on something, they want to go to a computer, pull up Ancestry. They may not have Ancestry for themselves. A lot of people don't. And if we don't have that, then that kind of limits whether or not they're going to come down and really research with us. So we do have that now. You can go in and they can research. We have become a partner with Family Search, and that's the program, and it's free, and that's the program that the Mormons are over. Has the largest database in the world, and has probably more digital records, and so people don't have to really go where they have to go eventually, but they don't always have to go to the places where their ancestors are from. They can get it right there. Okay.
So again, hitting on some key barriers, just the digital divide, the lack of knowledge, knowing that some of these resources are readily available to us. It sounds like a challenge. If you could do anything, how would you improve the marketing, I guess, or letting people know that these tools are available in communities of color, particularly?
Well, what we have done. I forgot this part. I'm also the president. I'm also the president of the Cleveland District Roundtable.
We should be scared of you, not but go on.
I'm the president of the Cleveland District Roundtable, which is the heads of all the genealogy societies in Northeast Ohio, over 5 counties. All right, there's 17 of them. Okay, 5 of them belong to the Ohio Genealogical Society, and all the others are independent. So we have Jewish, Hungarian, 2 African American societies. Well, 3, because we got one in Toledo that comes over, but they don't belong to us, but they do come and participate. And so we've been advertising, at least through them, that the county is now open. We got a new space, brand new space, and they have been bringing their societies there for tours. So they at least get to see what it is that we have and how they need to research. one of the things I think that we need, in addition to some of that stuff, is that they need to have a little more personnel, okay? They need some help in there, because we have Dr. Satina, and she's doing everything. I mean, everything. And she is going out and she's speaking to societies, and she's doing it on Sunday. You're not paying her on Sunday, but she is out there. She is out there publicizing the archives, and so are the rest of us. But I think we do need some personnel in the archives. One of the things that I hope to see, and I think we probably can get that done, is that we start having programs, because our space now is big enough to hold programs. And so if we start to have programs, then people will come, okay? They're concerned about parking. You know, I think we've kind of worked around it a little bit, but if you get a lot of people to come at once, then the parking is going to become an issue as well. But I think we can I know we can get the top national genealogy people here to give programs, to give lectures on how to use archives and the things that you find in archives. And I know all those people, so I know we can get them.
Excellent. Well, I won't monopolize the questions. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Or there, Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Dr. Abbott. So you spoke a little bit about Family Search. Is that under the Latter-day Saints?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask your opinion. It sounded like, what was your opinion of them? And I came in contact with them down in Washington at some conference, and they were there doing free genealogy, you know.
For Family Search?
Right.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, all of those websites kind of work together, because if you have Ancestry.com and you're looking at a record, and if that record has been digitized at Family Search, Ancestry will tell you to go there to look at it. Family Search's database is free. People can look at it from home. But they have it set up in such a manner that there are some records that you won't be able to see from your house. Okay? It'll tell you that you need to go to a partner, or you need to be in the family history library. We have 2 family history libraries here. We have one in Westlake and we have one in Solon. Okay? Westlake is probably the one where you probably can get the most help, and the doors are open more often than the one in Solon. But we do have 2. If you go to a partner, then you're looking at Cleveland Public Library downtown only. They are the partner. So you can't go to any of the branches. You'd have to go downtown. Western Reserve Historical Society is a partner. Now, the County Archives is a partner. Okay. So you would have to, there are times when I'm at home and I'm looking at stuff, and then it says I got to go to a partner. So I get in my car, come down to Cleveland Public. That's all right, because I'm a genealogist and I want to do that. But they've set it up that way. It wasn't always that way, but now they've set it up that way. And one reason I think they did it is because they used to send the film, the actual film of the records that you're looking at. They used to send the film. If the libraries or repositories were connected to them, or partners, I'm gonna call it, then only thing I would have to do is go down to Cleveland Public, tell them this is the film I need to see from Salt Lake City, and then they would send it to Cleveland Public. I can't take it out. I have to see it in there. Then, because they're trying to digitize everything, they've stopped sending the film. So they came up with these partners, and so there's only certain records that are available for the partners to see.
A couple more questions. So if your maternal side is adopted, is it easy? Right.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you research that? How do you look? Because it just kind of stops, and I know certain people fall in when they were able to see records, or So how do you handle that if someone,
Well, it'll depend on where the adoption took place. It also will depend on whether we're talking about a formal adoption, because you know how at least I think African Americans do. Somebody can't take care of a child, we bring it in in our house, and voila, adopted. Okay, they no longer become a cousin. Now they're the sister or the brother. Okay, now if you got a situation like that, it might be a little bit difficult, but we do have genealogists, I'm not one of them, who specialize in adoption. Okay,
and last question would be, you spoke earlier of the class, the 5-day, 8 to 5
Yeah, there's
class.
2
Do you
classes.
charge for that? How do
Oh, yeah.
people, okay.
yes, they charge, oh, and I forgot about GRIP, because I used to, well, I'm getting ready to do a little bit for them. GRIP is the Genealogy Research Institute of Pittsburgh, so that's closer to us. There's a fee for the course, and it varies, and I'm going to say probably the range is going to be anywhere from about $450 to about $600 for the week. Okay, plus the individual has to have housing and food, and you'll be amazed how many people show up to do that, because they are interested in trying to break down brick walls and to understand. You have to understand what records are available to you. Okay, you have to understand the record types and the different records, and I'll give you just a little short example. In my society, which is the African American Genealogy Society of Cleveland, I have a subgroup in there with about 10 people called the Do-Over. Those are people who claim they got a brick wall and they have been researching for 5 or more years. Okay, the reason they have that brick wall is because they're not doing what they're supposed to do, so I'm making them start over. So one of the things that I did in August was brought them to the county archives so that they could see what kinds of records they have in our county archives, and so that they would be able to take that information, and when they go back to wherever they are researching, go into that county archives and say, do you have property cards? Okay, because they've seen it and they know what kind of information is on it. So we did that in the morning. We did the Cuyahoga County Archives in the morning, and we did the Cleveland City Council Archives in the afternoon. None of those 10 people knew we had a Cleveland Council Archives. And so then they were able to get the history and see maps, and because that's part of genealogy, to see the maps. Me personally, I learned there that in my research for Antioch Baptist Church, I couldn't find a map for them in the 1850s. It was in the Cleveland Council, that City Council Archives, that I learned that part of 89th and Cedar used to be Newburgh Township. So I'm looking for a Cleveland map when I need to be looking for a Newburgh Township map. Okay? So we learned to put all of those pieces together, and to, I always say, understand that wherever a record was created, that's where the record stays. And I look at you because your father helped me one time when I was riding around the city trying to find a death record. I read the newspaper. The newspaper said that the person was going to be funeralized here. They were funeralized here. They were funeralized at Purnell Jones, okay? I mean, that's where it happened, and the person is buried here. And so what I had to do was I went down to the city. I need a death record. The clerk says we don't have it. We don't have it. And then her question was, what hospital did they die in? Okay. They died in Huron Road. Okay, so that told me that the death record is in East Cleveland. Okay, but I wouldn't have known that they were in Huron Road until I went to the funeral home and said, "This is the person I'm looking for. Can you tell me where you picked up the body?"
Keep records.
Okay, where did you pick up this body? And it was your father who told them to give me that information. All I wanted to know, what hospital, where did you pick up the body? The answer was Huron Road. So then I go to East Cleveland and get the death certificate.
Well, clearly you have a depth of knowledge that is very valuable to us. I think Councilman Miller had a question or comment.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I also want to say that we're honored to have you on our commission, and we appreciate your wealth of knowledge, and I would just share that I went to graduate school at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and
So you know.
so I was very much aware about the genealogy and how important that is. So we certainly support your continuing to serve us
Thank you.
and appreciate your depth of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, again, thank you for your willingness to serve.
You're welcome.
When you mentioned Antioch Baptist Church, I said, well, you're a neighbor down the street.
I am.
So then you mentioned my dad. So a few questions. One, do you provide any programming at your church, Antioch? Have you
What
had
we have
opportunity?
been doing, Pastor Davidson wants me to do some genealogy where I teach members in the church. We haven't had the opportunity to do that yet because my schedule is not right there yet. But what we have been doing, I did the research on the church because we have a history committee. And so I researched the church and found that there were a lot of things that are out there about Antioch that are not quite true.
Okay.
And so I have been giving in increments the history of Antioch. Once a month during the church service, we do something that's called a moment in Black history. And our men's ministry came up with that. And it's done every month. So we didn't just do February. Every month we do a moment in Black history. And so there are times in that spot that I'm talking about Antioch because very few people know that Antioch's beginnings is in the Old Stone Church. Okay, it's in Old Stone. And so I do that, and then there have been, I think this year I've probably done 3 where after church they can stay and I just do a whole series of This is Antioch.
Great. Well, as you develop that programming, there are members at St. Timothy down the street at 71st and Carnegie who focus on the same thing.
Okay.
There might be opportunity to connect in what you do there at Antioch. You may have opportunity to
Well,
share at St. Timothy.
Let me just, I'll say this to you because I can't think how long I've been doing this for Olivet in their rites of passage. And so those are the young kids in the rites of passage. And so I have a day with them. We go down to the Cleveland Public Library, and then they're able to use the facility there. And, you know, that was before we got what we have. But we go there, and usually I try to take one of the kids and try to trace their ancestry. And I teach the genealogy through their rites of passage. I've probably been doing that for about 8 or 9 years for Olivet.
Okay.
Yeah.
To echo Councilwoman Brown's comments earlier, I just remember as a small child, our parents sat you down, we watched Roots and Alex Haley, and it was just a national moment, everyone watching that. But I just remember thinking, I said, how did he figure out all of that history, you know, in the context of slavery and finding
Well, he had a lot of oral history too.
Oral history.
So you have to, as we say, you have to take that oral history because a lot of times that's all we have. And you take that oral history, and that's the genealogist, it's your job to prove it. You know, because if you got an Aunt Hazel like I do, she embellished everything. And so then you got to get that part out of it. And then, because it's not hard to prove. I mean, the records are there. And so I say use that oral history as a guide. He just happened to have oral history that was really correct.
Yeah, wow. One question on the Ancestry.com. I've had individuals who have said, well, I wanted to do it, but then they had heard what happens to their
DNA?
DNA afterwards. Can you speak to that? Is it safe? Is it confidential? Just what happens once you
Well,
submit, and what happens to your
Ancestry.
material afterwards?
Ancestry.com advertises more than any other DNA databases. So that's what people know. There are lots of databases out there that do DNA other than Ancestry. Right now, I think people are taking those tests because they want a shortcut to their family history, and there is no shortcut, okay? And so we teach you have to have a question. Have a question and of what you're trying to learn. Not that you come from Africa or Europe, or not that, okay? Because when that comes back to you, if it says that you're 20% African, okay, what does that mean? Nothing. It means nothing. Because the continent is too big, so it means nothing, okay? But you may need to do a DNA test when you talk about adoption. All right, we've got specialists, genealogy specialists that do that, and a lot of times they have them to take DNA tests so that they can see within the databases if there's somebody that might match them. But then you've got somebody who knows what they're doing to kind of guide you through it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the database that the police were using was not Ancestry. Okay, it was not Ancestry. What happens is we had something called GEDmatch, and the advertisement was if you took any of the other DNA tests, upload yours to GEDmatch. And people were doing it like crazy, and that's what the police were using because everybody was in there, everybody, and that's how they was breaking those cold cases. But we also got genealogists that specialize in forensic too. So, you know, they help him find people. If your father got some outside children, that's the only way I can describe it, we can find them. And we're using those databases to help do it.
Great.
So just when you take it, have some idea what you're looking for. That's all.
You just maybe think that sometimes people may not want to find out everything that they want to.
Correct. That's correct. That's correct. Things that happen and they find out their father is not their father, or their cousin is not their cousin, and they don't want to know that. But if you take that test, that's what you'll get.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. All right. Well, I think we could spend probably another hour talking to you, Dr. Abbott, but we don't have that time for time. So if there are no further questions, comments, or concerns, I think everyone in this body would appreciate if you would just leave your contact information with our clerk so we can follow up for additional questions and comments off the record. But this doesn't look like it needs to be under second reading suspension. So let's. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Yes, we have another nominee. Come on, Mr. Peppers. You are on my second page. I'm sorry. Come forward, Mr. Peppers, please.
I'm gonna sit down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Peppers.
Hi, how are you?
I apologize.
That's okay.
If you'll give us a little bit of your background and why you would like to continue to serve by starting with stating your name for the record. Thank you.
My name's Keith Peppers. I wish I would have gone first because I can't compete with her credentials. I am a full-time faculty member at Baldwin Wallace University. I teach in the history department. I'm the archivist there. And so between that and having 3 little kids at home, doing anything extra should speak volumes. So this is one of the few things I do outside of those 2 responsibilities. So like I said, I teach classes at Baldwin Wallace. They're all in the field of history. I am responsible for the history, the archives, the curation of content, and the instruction of classes in the public history program there. I've been involved with archives, special collections, history, curation in museums and libraries and archives for almost 20 years now. I feel very old all of a sudden. And I have a master's degree in history with a specialization in public history from Cleveland State. I've been on the committee since its inception, and I think each one of us brings something unique to the committee, genealogists, archivists, historians, public historians, public librarians. So I think we all work really well together. I don't think we've had any heated debates in the year that we've been together. So I like what I do. I think I hope I play a unique role on the committee, and I'd like to continue doing that.
Thank you very much. Now, having served on this committee already, what are some of the things that you are proud about that you've done in this committee so far?
Yeah, I'm proud. I would say in the time that we've been together, it's been more about creating the framework on which we function. The only thing I can think of that was really outside or removed from that framework is the opening of the county archives to the public. It was a large event, and there was a lot of planning that went into it. And as my colleague said, Dr. Satina, the head of the county archives, it's a very small crew of people that work out of the county archives, and she puts in a lot of extra time that she doesn't get compensated for. And to do what she did with regards to opening the county archives to the public and promoting it was probably above and beyond what she should have to do. So it would be greatly beneficial to the county archives if we had additional assistance that we could provide. Judy, the archives and the history that they preserve are irreplaceable, and they are very unique, and it doesn't do a lot of good to have this wealth of information in a building that is inaccessible or unknown. Some of the responsibilities that the committee were on outline, we're supposed to raise awareness and encourage visibility of the collection, and that's a really hard thing to do when you have, I think she has 2.5 employees. She does a great job going above and beyond, keeping the doors open, publicizing when she can, helping people. She, soup to nuts, she does everything. But actually going out and promoting the collection, nurturing collaboration with other organizations and raising the visibility is really difficult when you have such a small group of people.
So as the member of the commission and working in education, is that something that you find in your classroom an avenue where you can kind of be an advocate or ambassador for the archives?
I talk about the archives, and in the past I have encouraged my students to visit it as part of their independent field trips. I've encouraged students to intern there. There's a bit of a problem when you have out-of-state students that maybe don't have the access to transportation from Berea to their new location downtown. And I've had part of public history is the promotion of history and how we can engage the community and collaborate. And so my students, through a lot of experiential hands-on learning, do that. We've had students give presentations at public libraries on historical topics. They've curated exhibits. They've created web content. They've interned at a bunch of locations. But a lot of that is confined to the area around Berea because of time constraints. They've got other responsibilities, other classes that they have to go to and from, and making it all the way from Berea to the downtown location is a little prohibitive unless they take it upon themselves to do an internship there over the summer or visit it outside class hours. So I've encouraged my students too, but life gets in the way sometimes.
We have to see how we can incentivize them. Are there any additional questions, comments, or concerns from the committee? Mr. Jones, you look like you have one.
Well, just a look.
Okay.
I did.
Anyone else? All right, well, you're getting off easy.
Thank you. I know.
Mr.
I know. I thought I'd be up
Peppers.
here for 15 minutes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a comment that I was honored to be able to attend the dedication event for the public opening, and it was indeed a phenomenal event that was very well put together.
It's a beautiful new location that they're in, having moved from West 25th and Fulton over there near the West Side Market. It's just a little hidden from public view. It's off of Euclid, a couple blocks. As she said, that the parking is an issue. It takes a lot to do something that rises to the level of garnering attention for people. You know, I have students, and I'm trying to, you know, we put on these huge exhibits. I just finished putting on an exhibit at BW, and it took a year for my colleague and I to curate it and create the content. And then you're a little disgruntled when you see like 3 students show up, because we live in a world where, you know, everyone has 1,000 responsibilities, and that, I'm sure, is reflected in the county archives and the way that they promote it and try to get students or young people to engage with it. So
Well,
it takes a lot of work to.
It is a lot of work, and we appreciate your willingness to serve in that capacity and the work that you have done. And again, your resume is equally outstanding, and we are honored to have you,
Thank you.
Commit your time and energy towards this. So now,
quick question.
yes, Councilwoman Conlon.
Through the chair to Mr. Peppers, did the ghost follow you guys?
The ghosts?
There was
Oh,
a
from the
ghost
old building? That place was terrifying. I gave a couple of informal tours to people that I had made reference to how creepy it was. If you had ever been to the old location, it was I believe it was an 1850s mansion, private residence that was connected to an adjacent mansion that had an addition built onto it that acted, I think, as like a home for children that misbehaved. I forget the exact wording. But the building, it was just a labyrinth of rooms that were poorly lit, and the floor was creaky or unstable in some places.
Dr. Satina, every time she presents in front of us, it's about the ghost.
Yeah, I'm sure that some of them were packed up and moved over there as well. So.
Madam Chair,
Miller.
there's 2 more council meetings before their new term starts, so I'm going to move referral to the full council for second reading.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I'll second that. Any questions, comments, or concerns? There being none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. And
you so much.
finally, our last item, if you'll read it into the record, please.
Resolution number 2019-0243, making an award on requisition number 45502 to the James B. Oswald Company in the amount not to exceed $834,650 for professional employee benefits consultant services for the period 10/15/2019 to 4/15/2023.
All right, looks like we have Ms. Woods before us. If you'll state your name for the record and let us know what it is you are presenting.
Yes, good morning. Holly Woods, Director of HR for Benefits and Compensation. So let me go ahead and address, before I go through the process for selection and the awarding of the contract, let me go ahead and just address the timeliness issue here. So we did start this process about over 6 months ago for an RFP and to get through the process for a contract renewal. And just over 6 months was not enough for that. So we know now that we need to do this about 9 months in advance of a renewal. So that's why you see the contract here is actually starting on 10/15. We're a few weeks behind there, and next year we'll start it plenty early. So we did go through an RFP process. RFP was issued. We had 4 vendors that responded to our RFP, and a team reviewed those vendors, and as a result of the analysis, we did choose to re-award the contract to Oswald. This is Oswald's second contract with us for the benefit consultant administration.
The other 3 vendors?
The other 3 vendors were Highland, Findlay, and Arthur Gallagher.
All right. Continue, please.
Sure. So yes, this is our second contract with Oswald. You will see the time of this, the length of this contract is a little bit longer. As we look at contract term, their contract is up right when open enrollment starts, which few months before and after open enrollment period is the busiest time for benefits. So we want to extend that contract, getting it in alignment with the first quarter of that next year. So the next contract should go back to 3 years, but we wanted to get the timing of that contract end out of the open enrollment period, which doesn't allow us the appropriate time and effort to go through that renewal process. So that's why you see this one's a little over 3 years here.
And then just before you go on, I'm sorry to interrupt, the scores for the 3 vendors that were not selected.
You want the total scores?
Their scores, yes.
Okay. So for Arthur Gallagher, they had 79 out of 100. Finley had 85 out of 100. Highland had 76 out of 100. Oswald had 95 out of 100.
Was there any, I guess, benefit given to them because they already had because 95 seems high?
No, it really, what we measured, the criteria that we evaluated them on was body of proposal, project management, anticipated work schedule, vendor qualifications, staff qualifications, and pricing. So there wasn't a measure based on their current performance. It was purely looking at the specs that we needed and the response there. Theirs specifically was for budget pricing, was the lowest of budget as well. So they were the highest rated for budget, but no, it was purely on the criteria that I reviewed with you.
Okay. Are there any additional, and I cut you off, so you can
Oh, that's
continue.
okay.
Go ahead, continue.
So I did want to go into, again, that was the criteria that we used in selecting the vendor, but we have had great success in working with Oswald. I just wanted to take an opportunity while I'm here to get a new contract with them. Just give you kind of I want to say two of the major touch points with their efforts as they've been with the county. So we have had just really kind of phenomenal progress in where our benefit plans are, and to the point where we've decreased our benefit premiums overall. That goes to the efforts in putting some controls in place in our benefit plans, changing some plan design into all of our benefit plans, renegotiating the renegotiation process. So we do RFPs every 3 years with all of our contracts, and Oswald has done a really good job in renegotiating those plans and the rates that we pay for them, as well as just making some bigger changes. So for example, we used to have United Healthcare as a separate plan. We eliminated them as a separate plan. They're now available through Medical Mutual, so it didn't impact employees with the change, but what we did experience is bigger price reduction and more cost savings as a result of getting their access through MMO instead of accessing them directly. So they've made some really great changes to what our plans look like, which benefit employees. They're not necessarily seeing a negative side to any of those changes. And then the second part is just the rebuilding of the reserve. So when we all first came on board, benefits was in a place where we really needed to take a look at budget and how everything was situated. And we really needed to get that required reserve rebuilt. And there was a 3-year plan to do that. And with everything that we've been able to do with the Oswald team, we were able to accomplish that in 2 years. And we are talking about putting in a benefit premium for employees in the first quarter of next year where they can realize some of that as well.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open it up to the committee. We'll start with Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Director Woods, did the cost increase from last year or from the contract previously?
It did because we are extending it, I think, from 36 to 42 months, so you do see a 7% increase overall.
Councilman Jones?
Were there any other bidders to the contract?
Yes, it was the other 3, Highland, Finley, and Arthur Gallagher.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. If there are no further questions, as you mentioned at the top of your remarks, it appears this needs to go to the full body of the council under second reading suspension. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'll go ahead and make that motion to send it to the full body of the council under second reading suspension. It's been moved in second. If there are no additional questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. This will move to the full body of the council. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Woods. All right, any miscellaneous business from the committee? There being none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.